Humans, of course, are also rooted in being, but they don't know it anymore. That's why in The Power of Now it says at the beginning, the beggar is sitting on a box of gold, but has never looked inside. Has always been begging for just a coin, little coins here and there. And this is what human existence has come to. They have lost the delight of life. And we are returning to that. The beauty is, when you're returning to something, you go to a deeper level than when you lost it. And it is not just the delight of life. There is peace in there. There is also, you are touching the source of all creativity, intuition, realization. True intelligence is there when you step out of the conditioned stream of thinking without losing consciousness, because that is another way that some humans attempt to do. They realize obscurely that they cannot live with this dreadful torture in their head anymore, so they go to drinks. One drink, feel a little bit better. Another drink, much better. Why are they feeling better? The mind slows down a bit. They're stepping out. They're coming a little bit free of the mental torture. And the third drink, then you feel really great, and you start feeling more alive. And then another one, and another, and another, and you're going towards unconsciousness or sleep. So it gives you a temporary reprieve, a temporary aliveness, because you're getting out of mind, but you are going towards unconsciousness. You are sinking below the level of thought. At first it's beautiful, because even that is better than the torture of the mind. And then if you went any further, eventually you would end up in the realm of minerals. And you would become as peaceful as a stone. Now, a stone too has some aliveness in it, but it is a very distant aliveness. A stone too is an expression of consciousness, and it is a pulsating energy field. If you could see it on a molecular level, you would see that the stone too is a being, an expression of the one consciousness, and a very peaceful one. Plants are very peaceful compared to humans, but a little bit less peaceful than stones. Animals are very sane, most of them, compared to humans. They're not destroying the planet, for a start. They're not making themselves unhappy. They don't inhabit a problematic reality. What about me? However, it is not for us humans to go back. We are not going back from thought into unconsciousness. If I asked you, would you, if you wanted peace, inner peace, let's say you live a tortured life, like this is quite normal, it's just a degree of intensity. You lead a tortured life, and I asked you, you can now choose, you can become a happy animal, a happy cow. Cows are quite happy, not the cows that are badly, despicably treated by humans in factory farms, another aspect of the insanity of humanity, but a cow that is alone living in Switzerland on the hills. And they look quite happy, and they even put up with a silly bell they ring around their necks. They look quite happy. When you look at them, it's actually a contemplation. You look at that cow and goes, beautiful, beautiful. And yet, if you could choose to become a happy cow or remain as a tortured, unhappy human being, you would probably choose to remain a tortured, unhappy human being. Unless you were so unhappy and so tortured that you would do anything whatsoever, including suicide, to get out of that. In which case, you are so fed up with suffering that it would be easy for you now to step out of that once and for all. Identification with that limited, absurdly limited sense of self. We are not going back to that. It's beautiful for plants to be plants, for an animal to be an animal, or a stone to be a stone. They are beautiful expressions of life. Our way is the way beyond the stage of mind, of thought, of deriving your sense of self from that. Then thinking can still happen, but it no longer has the capacity to make you unhappy. Thinking can then become a very powerful tool for creating whatever you need to create on the level of form. And thinking will become extremely empowered when it's no longer invested with a sense of self. When your self is no longer in thought, then truly will you be able to use thought beautifully and powerfully. If humans could immediately create anything with thought that they wanted now in their egoic state, the world would be in an even greater mess than it is now. Ultimately, yes, thought is very powerful to create. But that is not the solution to anybody's dilemma. If now I gave you all the power in the world to create any situation you like in your life, would not help you. Because whatever situation you create, you walk into with the same mind structures. So the same mind structures will then create the same circumstances, the same drama. Instead of in a little house, it's a drama in the mansion, the big mansion. Instead of nobody knowing about it, they might write about your drama in the papers. But it's not more significant, really, than anybody else's drama. If you were transported to paradise, an island in the Pacific, beautiful, everything. At first it would be wonderful, but then, as you're not connected with a deeper sense of aliveness, after a few weeks or months, you would get bored. Intolerable boredom would arise, and restlessness. No drama. Nothing is going on. Exit point body. Exiting the conditioned head. Noise in the head. Ah, good. Stay there. Feel it. Another exit point. Become more conscious of this moment. And you may have heard the New Age saying that whatever happens to you, you have chosen it. I'm not telling you this, though, because that is something you can argue with, and many people would. They say, there's no way I would have chosen this. No way, you're completely wrong. I wanted something totally different. Okay, that may be true. So I'm not saying that you have chosen whatever happens to you or whatever situation you're in at this moment. But you can live as if you had chosen whatever happens at this moment. First of all, you can see nothing that happens is isolated from the totality. Everything is connected with everything else. There is no isolated event ever in your life. When you see that whatever happens has a certain inevitability to it. And that is called the inevitability of is. It is. Now this is the most, you cannot argue with that little word. Is. What's happening right now? Whatever form this moment takes, it is. As it is right now. That statement is always true. And if you argue internally with the incontrovertible fact of is, you're very unhappy. You make yourself very unhappy. And you make others automatically also unhappy. There's nobody who make themselves unhappy who don't make others around them unhappy also. So here we have the exit point is become aware of the form that this moment, the only moment there ever is, the form that it takes right now, that changes continuously. But are you going through life resisting, resenting, denying the form that this moment takes? Here I am, waiting in line, and I've been standing here for an hour and a half, and it's not moving. How can they be so stupid? I'm going to write letters, and you write the letters of complaint in your head. There's nothing wrong with letters of complaint, but you're writing them in your head now. You're not actually writing them. And as these thought structures arise, there's enormous contraction, enormous suffering really, but it's not recognized as suffering. And I'm taking an easy situation, just a long waiting period. To recognize that the suchness, another word that the Buddha used, the suchness of this moment is always already as it is. And instead of resisting it internally, instead of denying it by mentally projecting yourself away from it into some more fulfilling future moment that isn't here, or looking for the future moment that's going to be more fulfilling than this one. And if you're looking, you get up into thought, because it's thought that does it. You leave your body, you leave the aliveness of now, and you move into identification with thought. And the thought denies or rejects what is. It criticizes it, it says this shouldn't be, or I hope it's over soon. I hope this moment is over soon. Is a deep-seated mind habit in humans, is not usually recognized because it's unconscious, but you can see how dysfunctional it is if now we make it conscious. People living in such a way, if you were saying, how often would you say during the course of a day, I hope this moment is over soon? If you uttered that consciously, you would maybe utter it 100 times a day. And what are you saying if we now retranslate that phrase? And what you're saying is, I hope life is over soon, because this moment is life. Or you're saying, I hope to find life eventually. I hope to feel truly alive eventually. I hope a moment will come when I feel that, when I find life. Does it ever come when you're trapped in that mind pattern? A few times, many times, the delusion of having found that moment will come occasionally. It's called falling in love, winning $1 million, getting a great job, getting married, going on vacation. The delusion that now you have found a moment that is good. And before you know it, it's gone again. Or even in the middle of it, you're walking along the beach on your vacation that you dreamt about for several months, and you're thinking, oh, next week I'll be back in the office. But when really it doesn't matter whether you're on the beach or the office to feel the life that you are. So the life is concealed in now. So the first thing is to detect in yourself when you're telling the present moment that you don't want it. The only moment there ever is and you don't want it. The only time there ever is and you're saying, get out of my way. I'm on my way somewhere else. If you stop people here in this city or any other big city that are running around like excited little getting to the next thing, if you stopped anybody and asked them where they're going, they would give you their destination. It's all very important, but everybody would be going towards the future. They would all be saying, I'm going to a future moment that's more important than this one. If you really ask them, okay, compare the importance of where you are now to the importance of where you want to get. They would say, okay, where I want to get to is more important than now. Always. And the whole civilization lives like that, and it seems to make sense. Because you see confirmed on television that everybody lives like that. It must be okay. And yet it's dysfunctional. And then people ask, would I still be effective? What would I do if I accepted the now? Would I not become a passive doormat that says, do to me whatever you like? No. The present moment is accepted in its isness. That means you face fully the form that this moment takes. You welcome it. You allow it. If you can't welcome it, at least you can say, there you are. There you are. There it is. This is the form that this moment takes. There's my car. Somebody has smashed the windscreen. A little thing that could cause little unhappiness, but the mechanism of little and big is all the same. You get back to the car. Somebody smashed the windscreen. It is already as it is. Nothing, you could add nothing to it that would improve it through any reaction. So that brings you're beginning to approach reality, which is now. This is vital. You bring to it a state of alert presence. And in that alert presence, you are looking, actually or metaphorically, attention flows from you onto the situation. It may be a challenge. It may be something that requires action. It may be something that requires immediate action. And you look, allow this moment to be. Windscreen smashed. Okay. Raining, car getting wet inside. What can I do? Okay. You immediately out of the acceptance, right action arises. Out of rejection of what is, action will also arise. But it is more likely to be not quite right for that situation because it's tainted with a lot of denial and rejection and negativity. And then you're on the phone and you're in a very bad mood and you're trying to get somebody to repair the car and they can hear how bad your mood is and they don't want to do it because you're not nice. Yeah. And the universe doesn't respond very well when you are denying what is. You don't get a good response. So when you make this moment into an enemy, you're making reality, the universe, into an enemy. To see the power that can come through you when you accept the now in whatever form it comes, because you realize the futility of saying no to it, as saying no to life. And if something dreadful should be happening at this moment, then your acceptance needs to be deeper. Something dreadful may be happening right in front of you or to you. Surrender is required. Surrender to what is at this moment. And people in the most dreadful situations, we have reports of people who have suffered in the most dreadful circumstances or situations, illness, prison camp, complete loss of everything in their lives, all at once. And some of them were in hell and remained in that state until they died. Others were forced through suffering out of the state of resistance. They couldn't stand the suffering anymore. They couldn't stand themselves anymore. They couldn't stand the resistance anymore. It became unbearable. So a moment came, and they never perhaps read any book about it, never heard any spiritual teaching. A moment came when internally they no longer resisted the isness of this moment. There was acceptance. And suddenly, they later talked about it, an enormous amount of peace was suddenly there. An enormous amount of aliveness in the midst of hell in some cases. Suddenly a serenity, a peace, and they didn't understand why. What happened? What happened was the yes, the inner yes to what is. And very often, very problematic life situation changed suddenly when they offered no resistance. Because when you offer no resistance to life, which is now, life begins to work for you. You open the gates to the greater intelligence of which you are a part to come through. So something can come through that is more intelligent than the limited human mind. And this comes into the world as right action, spontaneous right action. Because some situations, they need to be accepted, but action may also be necessary. Other situations, you cannot act for the time being, and all you can do is, this is how it is right now. And you're free of suffering. I'm in prison, these are bars, here I am. The mind will say, 10 more years you have to do. But you are sitting there just at this moment. I'm getting many letters, more and more letters from people in prison whose life has changed dramatically. Now, what does that mean? When you accept the now, your mind will always try to draw this moment and make it part of the story of me. So if they put you in prison, rightly or wrongly, your mind would draw that and you would be interpreting this as, this is where they have put me. This is what society has done to me. This is happened because of my parents. This has happened. You have a story associated with it that tells you the story of who you are, and it's very painful. This is me. People usually confuse the story with which they interpret this moment with the simplicity of what's actually happening. So in the present cell, the simplicity of this moment is body sitting on chair, feeling the aliveness inside, and looking around at the walls. But there too, there's an aliveness. You see a little bit of sky perhaps through the window. Some people are making noise. You feel you're getting underneath the surface appearance of this moment, which doesn't look so good perhaps, to a deeper aliveness. And as you look at the walls and the bars on the windows, you let go of the story and feel the simple aliveness of this moment. You're perceiving the wall and the bars and the sky beyond, and you're aware of yourself as that which perceives, not the story, the consciousness. And in any situation, you will notice there's a story and there's the simplicity of this moment. I gave a few examples in the book Stillness Speaks. There's the story. What a miserable day. There's the simplicity of this moment. It is raining. There's the story. He didn't have the decency to return my call. It's a story that you're telling yourself in the service of being right, which is a mental thing. And when you can be right, you feel you're a bit more yourself. It's dysfunctional, but that's how the egoic mind structures work. He didn't have the decency to even return my calls, and then you can elaborate on the story of who he is. Or you can see the simplicity of this. He didn't call. No, he didn't call, no. That's what is. The phone is not ringing. Now, little phrases are little stories, but for most people, the little stories is always then becomes elaborated, and they go through life with stories. She let me down. She did something to me. What happened? I was there and she wasn't there. Oh, is that all? Yes. So in any moment, can you extract the simplicity of this moment, the singularity of this, without confusing it with a mental story that you superimpose on the simplicity of this moment? That is a story of me about this and they, what they did, and usually in the story you are right. And usually in the story either another person or a situation, of course, has to be wrong. It doesn't matter whether you make a situation wrong or a person wrong, as long as you can be right. Why is it so satisfying to be right? Because it strengthens the mind-made sense of self. You feel for a moment, if I can be right, if I can only complain enough about something or someone, the more I complain, the more I feel more strongly my sense of identity. It's an illusion, it's an illusory sense of self, and it's a suffering sense of self, but to the ego, it loves that suffering. It doesn't even know that it's suffering when it's complaining. It feels good to complain. I'm really getting into it. And the more I complain, the more strongly I get the me and the not me. the stronger the separation gets between the imaginary mind-made separation between me and the rest of the universe. And that goes so far as to become, for many people, almost a sense that the entire universe is basically out to get them. The entire universe is basically considered as hostile, and you need to defend yourself continuously from it. They are out to get me. You may have heard the famous phrase, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they are not after you. And so that's what the dysfunction feels, what built into the conditioned thought structures, the need to blame is continuously there, coupled with the need to be right. And all those are stories that are imposed, that cover up the simplicity of this moment. So mentally you cover up what could be very, very simple. And that is all the Zen stories that you may have heard. Zen is there for you to discover the simplicity of just this, because that's all there is. Do not confuse this moment with a story that the mind imposes on it. And then you get underneath the surface appearance of this moment and feel a power that before was not there, available to you, when you allow the form that this moment takes to be without imposing interpretations. And if interpretations come habitually, automatically, it will be easier for you now to recognize them as just interpretations, just stories. When the complainer comes into your head, maybe later today, maybe as you sit here, the habitual mental habit of complaining, then you can discover that, oh, and this is an enormously beautiful thing when you can discover the complaining voice in your head as not yourself, but simply thoughts. It's the complaining voice in the head. Whereas before you thought that was me, that was I. You were the complainer, identified completely. So there a space of freedom arises. Ah. You're stepping out of conditioned thought. Thousands and thousands of years of collectively conditioned mind structures. And the more you step out, the more alive you feel. And then every moment that you totally face, because you say yes to it, there's an enormous power that flows through you when you look this moment straight in the face, no matter what it is. Even if you get home and your house has collapsed, and you look, there it is, that was my house once. And what can you do? It already is. It is. Oh. And in any situation that you completely allow, you will find a miracle. Something emerges out of that situation that looked on the surface very negative. When you completely allow it, something else will emerge out of it that you could never have thought of, that will be better in one way or another. Something will emerge. There's a grace hiding in every moment in life. The grace is hiding no matter what form this moment takes, even if it looks dreadful, but you can never know it if you don't bring the allowing to it. And some of you here have already experienced it here and there. You were confronted with something that you would never have chosen, an illness, deep loss of possessions or relationship or status in society or reputation or whatever. You would never have chosen it, and yet it somehow drove you into an acceptance. At some point you said yes to what is. Not the entire situation, again, not the story. You never say yes to, I have to say yes to the fact that I'm totally ruined now. What story is that? You can't say yes to that. I have to say yes to the fact that everything has been totally useless in my life, 30 years of work for nothing, my wife has left me, everything has fallen to pieces, I have to accept that. No. That's a story. You can't accept stories like that because the story itself is the resistance. Well, all you accept is just this moment. Here I am, sitting on a park bench. Here I am. You look, $2 in my pocket. 2, 1, 2. And then you look. There's breathing. The body is alive. Trees, and you look and you're alert, and the sky, there's a field of alert presence that even flows into your sense perceptions. And then if little thoughts arise, they would be thoughts like, this moment is good. It feels good to be alive. You are present in this moment. For a while you relinquished the story, which is complicated, which is to do with the stock market, divorce attorneys, it's to do with your health situation, it's to do with loss, it's to do with all the things that have happened in your life situation, that you could also be sitting on that bench totally burdened with that. And your face would look very different from one situation to the other. One situation is a compulsive telling yourself your story. And if anybody should be unlucky enough to sit next to you on the bench, you maybe start telling them to get some feedback of, yes, you're right to you're truly unlucky and you should really be suffering, you're right to be happy. You have all the right to be unhappy. That's what you would love to hear. And yet there's nobody there. So you have to tell it to yourself. What's going to happen now? It's just no point in going on. Can you see how burdened you are, what a burden you are carrying with that, if you can't step out of that? And the thought structures might even be telling you that you're getting, maybe if you think hard enough about your unhappy story, you'll find some solution. You won't. You will find a solution only if you step out of it into the aliveness of now. And that requires a shift from mind identification to alertness. The first thing is to enter the body. There you are. Already parts of the story fall away because you cannot hold that at the same time as you can feel the body. Then the alertness rises. That before, alertness means conscious awareness. Before, your conscious awareness was eaten up by compulsive thinking, like a car that's uselessly burning up gas. You keep your foot on the accelerator, the car is in neutral, and for hours and hours the engine of the car goes hum, hum, hum. It wears out very quickly, and it uses up a lot of gas. So your thoughts absorb your consciousness and make it into more thoughts. They gobble up your aliveness, proliferating thoughts. If you could see psychically, you could probably see dark clouds emanating from your head. And then a dark cloud hanging over your head. And you can step out of that by entering the body and realizing what is the reality of this moment. Story begins to fall away. And you single out This instant that the Course in Miracles calls the holy instant, because it's the only place where holiness or sacredness can be found, and your attention rises, it's partly in the body and partly on your external sense perceptions, which also begin to be alive and beautiful, because you're aware now of what you see. Oh. And what arises is a field. I'm not just speaking about this. As I speak, see if that can be your reality at this moment. What replaces the story-based sense of self is an alert presence. That alert presence we could call awareness or consciousness, and it emanates from the one that it is better not to name, the source of all life. It comes from that. It is the light of the one that is consciousness. Like the light of the sun is still part of the sun. Consciousness, the one consciousness that you are, before it becomes a thought, before it becomes a world, that emanates directly. It replaces thought. And it is in that you are now connected with the one intelligence that manifests as billions of things that come and go. You're connected with that. And the moment you connect with that, it wants to help you. It is ultimately not separate from who you are. It's just that you becoming aligned with life. The delusion of being a separate little me that has to protect itself from the world goes. You become aligned with life, and as such, life now is no longer perceived as hostile. It actually, this is suddenly the place where miracles and coincidences come into your life that before couldn't, because you were saying no to life continuously. Life couldn't help you. It's like the sun. You're putting a hood over your head, and it's like saying, no, the sun is shining, but you're pulling this over your head. You don't see it. Take that off. To the sun it doesn't matter. And suddenly you find you're sitting on this bench and you've stepped out of the story, and aliveness arises, and you actually sense what we could also call the I am. That is not the I that is usually meant when you tell your story. Usually when you say I, it's you want to know who I am, what I do for a living. You want to hear the story of I, not that I, a deeper sense of beingness or presence, that's who you are. You get in touch with that. That usually gets mixed up with the story, the sense of beingness or presence. It's mistaken for that. But if you can feel that directly as presence, your own beingness, before thought arises, even if fragments of thoughts come, it's fine. And eventually when you need to use your mind, it works beautifully. But right now, here on this park bench, where the story would be telling me that my life has gone to pieces, well, it hasn't really. There's intense aliveness here, the aliveness that I am. And that attracts whatever it is that you need. Suddenly somebody sits next to you and starts talking because he wants to know why you look so alive and so peaceful. And before you know it, he's offering you $1 million to invest. So you can try again. If your first investment business collapsed, helpful things come in. From within as realizations, from without as events. Coincidences tend to happen more and more that you cannot explain. So the simple thing for this to happen is make room for this moment, space for this moment. Body, allowing this moment to be as it is. And what has come in now, we've already, as we were talking, a third exit point out of mind and an entry point into presence, we already touched on this, is sense perceptions. Bringing conscious awareness to what you see now, what you hear now. Bringing an alertness to your sense perceptions is another exit point from the mind-identified state. Because when you become alert and truly see something, you're not interpreting it. Ah. Oh. And you may catch yourself, whenever you first look upon something, your field of vision moves from here to there. Something enters your field of vision, a flower, a chair. The first moment or two, that's a conventional way of putting it, you look at it, there's a little space in which the perception arises, and you haven't mentally called it anything or made it part of your story. There's a space of alert, aware stillness. Whenever you first look upon something, if you can become aware of that, it will extend. And then comes a depth into your sense perceptions that wasn't there before. A deepening. The depth is you become aware of the awareness through which you perceive, the stillness through which you perceive. The consciousness is all one thing. The consciousness through which you perceive the world. There's the perception, and you sense yourself as the consciousness in which the perception happens. That is beautiful and powerful when you can go through life as that field of intelligence. When you look upon things, and above all look upon other human beings, bring that into relationships. Instead of meeting people with mental concepts, giving them a conceptual reality, allow them to be as they are at this moment, and look and listen in and through still aware presence. That is also love. Whenever you look upon something and do not label it mentally, there's an allowing. Allow that human being to be there. Give them attention. There's a flow of attention. And in that, you are not making the other human being into other. The separation that comes from identifying with conceptual thinking falls away. And without that sense of separation from you and between you and others and you and the rest of the universe, there's now the beginning of a realization of oneness of yourself with all other life forms. Before you couldn't know that, because you conceptualized every other life form. You put a label on everything. that creates the barrier. So the amazing thing is, this is how you suddenly become very deep and very intelligent, and you move about life being not just the little person. The little person becomes just a surface phenomenon, which is really what it is, including your life story. Yes, it's still there, but no longer absorbs your identity. That is much deeper. You are a field of intelligence, a field of consciousness that's going through life. A person also, but on a deeper level, you are greater than the person you thought you were. Far deeper, far greater. And that flows even into your life situation, even into the circumstances of your life, and they tend to unfold more harmoniously as this unconditioned consciousness that you are comes through, shines through. Humans are ready for this now. There is an evolutionary impulse in the universe that wants this shift in human consciousness to happen. The planet desperately needs this shift in human consciousness to happen, because if it doesn't, humans will destroy the planet very soon, if it does not happen. So there's now a certain urgency. This is why many humans feel this impulse, this change happening. They are ready to listen to this message. They come to a speaker like this speaker, who is not a stage personality, who doesn't jump up and down. There's no show. He just sits there and talks almost monotonously, and yet people come and recognize something. They recognize something that deep down they already knew. And as you sit here, it comes forth. It gets drawn out of you more quickly, that level of consciousness. We will take a little break now that looks like time. This is clock time, and we will meet in 25 minutes and look at one of the greatest obstacles for most people to presence, that is the accumulated pain from the past that humans carry inside. Thank you.